The first time I noticed Colton Hayes looking at me, I genuinely thought he had me confused with someone else. Guys like him didn't look twice at guys like me. That sounds dramatic, but if you'd gone to Westbrook University, you'd understand exactly what I mean. Colton was everywhere. Captain of the intramural basketball team. The kind of guy professors remembered even in lectures with 200 students. Tall, confident, always surrounded by people laughing too hard at whatever he said. Girls loved him. Guys wanted to be him. Even people who claimed they hated popular crowds somehow knew his schedule. And me? I was Gavin Mercer. Film major. Quiet. Mostly invisible unless someone needed help editing a project at 2 a.m. I wasn't miserable about it or anything. I had friends. A decent life. I just existed on a completely different floor of the social hierarchy. Which was why it made absolutely no sense when I looked up from my laptop in the campus cafe and found Colton Hayes staring directly at me. Not casually. Not in that vague people looking around the room way. He was looking at me like he knew me. The second our eyes met, he smiled. Actually smiled. Then he started walking over. I remember glancing behind me to make sure there wasn't someone cooler sitting nearby. There wasn't. "Hey," he said, stopping at my table. Up close, he somehow looked even more unfairly attractive. Dark blonde hair pushed back carelessly, hoodie sleeves shoved to his elbows, expensive watch on his wrist like he didn't even realize it was there. Hey, you're Gavin, right?" That caught me off guard immediately. "Yeah." He nodded like that confirmed something important. "Film department." "Also yes." He laughed softly. "You always answer questions like you're waiting for a hidden camera?" I blinked at him. Honestly, my brain had stopped functioning around 30 seconds earlier. "I've seen your short films online," he continued. "The black and white one about the train station? That was sick." I stared at him. Not because the compliment was unbelievable okay, partly because of that, but because I knew for a fact almost nobody watched those videos besides exhausted film students and my mom. "You watch my stuff?" "Yeah." He shrugged casually. "You're really good." Something about the way he said it felt genuine. No irony. No fake politeness. And somehow that made me even more nervous. "Oh, I managed." "Thanks." He leaned one hand against the table. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something." Of course he did. This was the part where reality corrected itself. He probably needed help editing some fraternity promo video or wanted free equipment advice. Instead, he said, "You busy Friday night?" My brain completely short-circuited. "What?" "Friday," he repeated, smiling slightly. "You busy?" Every survival instinct I had screamed that I was misunderstanding this interaction in a catastrophic way. "I mean," I said slowly, "probably not." "Cool." He nodded once. "Come to Noah's party with me." I actually laughed from confusion. "No, seriously," he said. "You should." Noah Bennett's parties were legendary on campus. Massive off-campus house. Athletes. Influencers. Rich kids with perfect teeth. The kind of parties where people like me only appeared accidentally. "Why?" I asked before I could stop myself. That seemed to surprise him. "What do you mean, why?" "I mean," I gestured vaguely between us. "You don't even know me." Colton studied me for a second. Then he said something that completely threw me off balance. "I want to." And somehow that was worse. Because if he'd been joking, flirting carelessly, or trying to use me for something, I could have handled it. But he sounded sincere. That was terrifying. Before I could think of a response, his phone buzzed. He glanced down and sighed. "I gotta go to class." He pointed at me as he stepped backward. "But I'm serious. Friday, 8 o'clock." I didn't say yes. "You will." Then he smiled again and walked away like he hadn't just detonated my entire nervous system. I sat there staring after him for a full 10 seconds. Then immediately texted my best friend. "Gavin, I think Colton Hayes just asked me out." 3 dots appeared instantly. "Mason, either you're hallucinating or this is about to ruin your life." Honestly, both felt possible. By Thursday afternoon, I had almost convinced myself the whole thing wasn't real. That maybe Colton had been messing with me. Or drunk. Or confusing me with another Gavin from the film department. Because seriously nothing about this made sense. I spent most of Friday trying not to think about it at all. Which obviously meant I thought about it constantly. By 7:30, I'd changed outfits 4 times. Not because I was trying to impress him. I told myself that repeatedly while staring into my closet like it contained the meaning of life. Eventually, I settled on black jeans, a dark hoodie, and the only jacket I owned that made me look vaguely like a functioning adult instead of a sleep-deprived raccoon. Mason watched me from my desk chair with open amusement. You know, he said, straight guys usually don't invite quiet film majors to elite parties personally. I know. And popular guys usually don't memorize your student films. I know. And you're still going? I grabbed my keys. Unfortunately, yes. Mason grinned. If he murders you, I'm deleting your browser history before the police arrive. Real friendship. You're welcome. The party was already insane by the time I got there. Music shook the entire street. Expensive cars lined the curb. People crowded the front lawn holding red cups and yelling over each other. I almost turned around immediately. This was exactly the kind of environment where I disappeared. Too loud. Too many beautiful people. Too many reminders that I didn't belong there. I was halfway through texting Colton that something had come up when the front door opened. And there he was, like he'd been waiting for me. The second he spotted me, his entire face changed. Not politely, not casually. He genuinely lit up. Gavin. The way he said my name hit me harder than it should have. He walked straight past a group of girls trying to talk to him and stopped in front of me. You came. I blinked. You invited me. Yeah, but I wasn't sure you believed me. I honestly didn't know what to say to that. Up close, he smelled faintly like cologne and cold night air. His hoodie sleeves were pushed up again, revealing strong forearms that immediately made my brain unhelpful. Come on, he said. You're with me. Those 3 words did something deeply embarrassing to my nervous system. Inside the house was chaos. Bodies everywhere. Music loud enough to shake my ribs. Someone nearly crashed into me carrying a bottle of vodka before Colton casually caught my shoulder and guided me out of the way. That tiny touch shouldn't have mattered. It did. People are staring, I muttered quietly. Colton glanced around once. At me or you? You. He laughed. Good answer. Everywhere we walked, people called his name. Colton. Hayes. Bro, where have you been? He acknowledged everyone effortlessly, but what completely threw me off was this. He never left me behind. Not once. Every time someone tried pulling him into a conversation, he stayed close enough that I was still included. If someone interrupted me while I was talking, Colton redirected attention back immediately. It was subtle, natural, like he didn't even think about doing it, which somehow made it worse, because I was starting to realize this wasn't a joke. At one point, we ended up in the kitchen while people shouted over beer pong nearby. Colton handed me a drink. You okay? Honestly, I admitted, a little overwhelmed. Yeah, this place after an hour. I stared at him. You literally live for this. He shrugged. Not really. That surprised me enough that I forgot to be nervous for a second. You're like the king of campus. He groaned immediately. Please never call me that again. I laughed despite myself. There it is, he said softly. What? That laugh. He smiled a little. You barely do it unless you forget to overthink first. My stomach dropped, because that was weirdly accurate. Before I could respond, a girl appeared beside him and wrapped both arms around his shoulder dramatically. Colton, we're taking shots upstairs. She finally noticed me. Oh, hi. Hey, I said awkwardly. Her eyes moved between us once. Then something shifted in her expression. Not judgment. Recognition. Interesting. You coming? She asked Colton again. Nah. She raised an eyebrow. Seriously? I'm good. That seemed to genuinely shock her. She looked at me one more time before smirking slightly at Colton like she'd figured something out. Okay, she said slowly. Have fun. The second she disappeared upstairs, I turned to him. You didn't have to skip because of me. I know. Then why did you? He leaned against the counter, studying me in a way that made it impossible to breathe normally. Because I'd rather be here talking to you. No hesitation. No embarrassment. Just direct honesty. I looked away first. That seemed to amuse him. You do that a lot too, he murmured. Do what? Avoid eye contact when you're nervous. I'm starting to think you've been observing me like a wildlife documentary. He grinned. Maybe. My heart was beating way too fast now. There was no logical explanation for this anymore. No prank lasted this long. No popular guy looked at me like this for no reason. Which left only one possibility. And honestly, that possibility scared me more than anything else. Because if Colton Hayes actually liked me, I had absolutely no idea what to do about it. At some point around midnight, the party got too loud even for Colton, which was saying something. We escaped to the back porch while people inside screamed along to music that sounded like a dying speaker system. The cold air hit my face instantly, and I exhaled in relief. Told you this place gets unbearable, Colton said, leaning against the railing beside me. You say that like you aren't personally responsible for half the crowd being here. He smiled faintly. That's exactly why it gets unbearable. The backyard lights cast everything in soft gold. For the first time all night, it felt quiet enough to think. Unfortunately, thinking was becoming dangerous around him, especially because now that we were alone, I could feel the shift between us more clearly. Inside the party, there had been distractions, noise, movement. Out here, there was just him looking at me in that impossibly focused way. So, he said after a second, you always avoid parties like this? Usually. Why? I shrugged. Not really my scene. That's not an answer. I glanced at him. You always interrogate people this much. Only interesting ones. There was that directness again. No games. No pretending. I genuinely didn't know how to handle someone like that. I don't know, I admitted finally. Places like this make me feel invisible. His expression changed immediately. Gavin. The way he said my name was quieter this time. You are literally the least invisible person I've noticed all semester. My throat tightened unexpectedly, because he sounded serious. And the scary part? I believed him. Before I could respond, the porch door slid open behind us. 3 guys stumbled outside laughing loudly, immediately recognizing Colton. There you are, one of them said. Dude, everyone's looking for you. Tragic, Colton replied dryly. Then the guy noticed me. His expression shifted slightly, not rude exactly, just confused. Oh, sorry man. Didn't know you were busy. Something about the tone made heat creep up my neck. Busy, like I was interrupting something. Or worse, like Colton usually didn't spend time alone with guys like me. The awkward silence lasted maybe 2 seconds before Colton casually said, We are busy. The confidence in his voice stunned even me. His friends definitely noticed too. One of them raised an eyebrow slowly. Another exchanged a look with the first guy. Again, not judgment exactly. More like surprise. Well, the guy said eventually, we're heading downtown after this if you want to come. Nah, you sure? Colton glanced at me once before answering. Yeah, I'm staying here. The implication hit all of us at the same time. His friends left a minute later, throwing him increasingly suspicious looks on the way out. The second the door shut again, I stared at him. You know they think something's happening here now. Colton didn't even blink. Something is happening here. That completely destroyed my ability to speak. He watched my reaction carefully, then laughed softly under his breath. You get this look every time I say something honest. What look? Like you want to run away and stay at the same time. Unfortunately accurate. I rubbed the back of my neck nervously. You're very intense. Only with you. That did not help. At all. For a second, neither of us spoke. The music inside pounded through the walls while cold wind moved through the backyard trees. Somewhere deeper into campus, sirens echoed faintly in the distance. And suddenly the moment felt weirdly isolated. Private. Like the rest of the party had disappeared. Can I ask you something? I said carefully. Always. Why me? His expression softened instantly. Not amused. Not flirtatious. Just honest. I don't know, he admitted quietly. At first I thought you were intimidating. I almost choked laughing. Me? Yeah. He smiled slightly. You never tried to impress anyone. Never chased attention. You just existed like you genuinely didn't care whether people noticed you. That's mostly social anxiety. I know. His smile widened. Still liked it. I looked down at my drink because maintaining eye contact suddenly felt impossible. Colton continued more quietly now. Then I watched your films. My chest tightened again. And they felt real. He shrugged once. Most people here act like they're performing all the time. You don't. Nobody had ever described me that way before. Actually, most of my life I'd felt forgettable. Background noise. But Colton looked at me like I was the only thing in focus. It was honestly overwhelming. You keep staring at me, I muttered nervously. That bothering you? No, I admitted before thinking better of it. His eyes flicked down briefly toward my mouth. Very fast, but not fast enough. The air shifted instantly. Every nerve in my body noticed. And apparently he realized I noticed too, because he leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose like he was forcing himself to slow down. Okay, he murmured mostly to himself. What? Nothing. But it definitely wasn't nothing. The porch door suddenly opened again before I could ask. This time it was Noah himself. Hayes, he called. Why are you hiding out here? Then he noticed me. Oh, I wanted the earth to swallow me alive immediately. Noah looked between us once and grinned like he'd just solved a puzzle. Okay, he said slowly. Now this makes sense. Colton rolled his eyes. Relax. No, seriously. Noah laughed. You disappeared for like 2 months, and suddenly you're attending film department screenings? I froze. Colton looked genuinely annoyed now. Noah. But it was too late. I stared at him. You went to my screenings? Noah blinked. Wait, you didn't know? The silence that followed was catastrophic. Because Colton absolutely had not mentioned that. And judging by the look on his face, he hadn't planned to. You went to my screenings? The second the words left my mouth, Colton looked like he wanted to physically throw Noah off the porch. Noah, meanwhile, looked delighted. Oh my God, he laughed, pointing between us. He seriously never told you? Dude, Colton warned. No, this is incredible. Noah leaned against the doorway like he'd just unlocked premium entertainment. You know he made us sit through that 3-hour student showcase, right? I stared at Colton. He stared at Noah with murder in his eyes. You sat through 3 hours of experimental film? I asked slowly. Colton rubbed a hand over his face. Can we not do this here? Noah was absolutely not stopping now. He wouldn't shut up about your train station film afterward, he continued. Like actually annoying levels of obsessed. Okay, Colton snapped finally. Leave. Noah raised both hands innocently. I'm leaving. I'm leaving. But before disappearing back inside, he looked at me once and grinned. For what it's worth, I've never seen him chase anyone before. Then he vanished into the house. Silence. I looked at Colton. Colton looked very intensely at the floorboards. You were never going to mention that? I asked carefully. He exhaled slowly. Probably eventually. You sat through 3 hours of student films for me. When you say it out loud, it sounds worse. I laughed before I could stop myself. That finally got him to smile again. Honestly, he admitted. I was trying to figure you out. And attending my screenings was the normal approach. You don't make normal easy. The way he said it made warmth creep into my chest again. I leaned back against the railing beside him. How long? What? How long have you been whatever this is? His eyes met mine immediately. Since October. I nearly choked. October. I repeated. That's like 4 months ago. Yep. Colton, we've barely spoken before this week. I know. You're insane. He grinned slightly. Probably. I tried processing that information and completely failed. For months? While I'd been living my normal invisible life. Apparently, the most popular guy on campus had been secretly attending my film screenings like a lovesick maniac. That should have felt ridiculous. Instead, it felt strangely overwhelming. What exactly made you finally talk to me? I asked. His expression shifted into something softer. You looked tired. What? In the cafe? He shrugged. You were editing something and looked exhausted. I walked past twice trying to convince myself not to bother you. You noticed that? I notice everything about you. My stomach flipped so violently it was embarrassing. Nobody had ever said things like this to me before. Not directly, not confidently, and definitely not someone like him. For a second, we just stood there again in the cold night air, looking at each other too long. Then Colton said quietly, I think you're nervous because you assume I'm joking. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because unfortunately, he was right. I don't get why you like me, I admitted finally. That answer came instantly. I really do. No, I mean seriously. I laughed nervously. Look at you. He frowned slightly. What about me? You could literally date anyone here. Don't want anyone here. The directness hit like a punch every single time. I looked away again automatically and immediately heard him laugh softly. There it is again. What? That thing where you hide when someone says something nice about you. I groaned. Can you stop analyzing me like a psychology project? No, he smiled. You're interesting. I shook my head, trying unsuccessfully not to smile back. That seemed to make him relax slightly too. Like every time I laughed, some tension left his shoulders. Eventually, the music inside shifted louder again, and someone shouted Colton's name from another room. Neither of us moved. You know, I said carefully, people are definitely talking about us now. Good. I blinked. Good. His expression turned unexpectedly serious. Gavin, I spent 4 months trying not to look obvious around you. He stepped a little closer. I'm honestly tired. That sentence changed the atmosphere immediately. The teasing faded. The nervous humor too. Now there was just him standing close enough that my pulse felt unsteady again. You really mean this? I said quietly. Yeah. No hesitation. just certainty. And somehow that scared me more than mixed signals would have. Because if this was real, if Colton Hayes actually wanted me, then I had absolutely no clue how to protect myself from that. The porch suddenly exploded open again before I could think further. This time it was a drunk couple stumbling outside, arguing loudly. Colton sighed immediately. Okay, he muttered. I officially hate this party. I laughed. You invited me here. Terrible decision. He looked at me once. Come with me. Where? Drive. That probably should have sounded dangerous. Instead, I nodded almost instantly. And judging by the look on his face, that answer affected him way more than he expected. The drive started quietly. Not awkward quiet. Just the kind where both people are still recovering from whatever almost happened back there. Colton drove with one hand resting loosely on the steering wheel, city lights moving across his face in flashes of gold and shadow. Music played softly through the speakers, some indie playlist I didn't expect him to know existed. You listen to this? I asked eventually. He glanced at me once. You put half these songs in your films. That should not have affected me as much as it did. You seriously pay attention to everything. Told you. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. I noticed things about you. The car felt warm compared to the cold outside. Safe somehow, which was dangerous. Because I was starting to relax around him, and relaxing around someone like Colton felt like stepping onto very thin ice. After 10 minutes, we ended up parked near the overlook above campus where people usually came late at night to think dramatically about their lives. The city stretched below us in scattered lights. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Colton leaned his head back against the seat and exhaled slowly. Okay, he said quietly. This is better. I looked over at him. You escape parties here often? Only when they get fake. Something about that answer felt more honest than anything he'd said all night. You really hate all that attention, huh? He shrugged. I got used to it. Then he glanced at me. Doesn't mean I like it. I studied him carefully now. Without the crowd around him, he felt different. Still confident. Still magnetic. But quieter. Less performed. Like this version of Colton existed underneath everything everyone else expected him to be. You know, I admitted, I always assumed you loved being the center of attention. Most people do. And most people don't know me. The way he said it landed heavier than I expected. For a while we just sat there listening to distant traffic below campus. Then Colton asked softly, Can I tell you something weird? Depends how weird. He smiled faintly. The first time I saw you, you were asleep in the library. I turned toward him immediately. Excuse me. You were editing at one of those back computers at like 2 in the morning. He laughed under his breath. Your laptop was still open and you passed out with headphones on. Oh my God. I covered your screen because some guys nearby were taking pictures. That stunned me completely. What? They were making fun of your film project. His jaw tightened slightly at the memory. So I told them to leave. I stared at him in disbelief. When was this? October. October again. Apparently my life had secretly become a romantic thriller months ago, without anyone informing me. You never said anything? You looked exhausted. He shrugged. Didn't want to embarrass you. Something warm and painful twisted in my chest. Because that was such a small thing. Quiet. Careful. Nobody did things like that for me. Especially not someone like him. Colton. He looked over. And suddenly the air changed again. It kept happening every time we looked at each other too long. Like something invisible tightened between us. You're thinking too hard, he murmured. I'm trying to figure out if you're real. That made him smile slowly. I had the exact same problem with you. My pulse skipped embarrassingly hard. Then his expression softened. Can I ask you something now? Okay. Why do you always look surprised when I'm nice to you? The question hit harder than expected. I looked away toward the city lights below campus. I don't know. I lied. Colton watched me quietly for a second. Then, very gently. Yeah, you do. The worst part was, he was right again. I swallowed hard. It's just, I laughed nervously. Guys like you usually don't notice guys like me. His expression changed instantly. Not offended. Almost sad. Gavin, he said quietly. I need you to understand something. I looked back at him. You have absolutely no idea what you look like through other people's eyes. The sincerity in his voice completely wrecked me. Because there wasn't even a hint of flirting now. He sounded genuinely frustrated that I couldn't see myself properly. You walk into rooms acting like you should apologize for existing, he continued softly. Meanwhile, every person around you notices you immediately. That's definitely not true. It is for me. Silence. Heavy silence this time. The kind where both people know something important is happening. Colton's eyes flicked down toward my mouth again. Slower this time. Like he wasn't trying to hide it anymore. My heartbeat turned uneven instantly. You keep doing that, I whispered before thinking better of it. Doing what? Looking at me like. I lost the sentence halfway through. But apparently he understood anyway. Because his voice dropped lower when he answered. Like I want to kiss you? The entire car went silent. Every nerve in my body noticed those words. Neither of us moved. And somehow that felt even more intense than if he had touched me. You say things very directly, I managed quietly. His eyes stayed locked on mine. Only because I spent 4 months not saying them at all. That completely destroyed whatever stability I had left. For a second, I genuinely thought he might kiss me right there. I think he thought about it too. Because his breathing shifted slightly. Because the tension between us became almost unbearable. But then he leaned back slowly instead, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to regain control of himself. Sorry, he murmured. For what? He laughed softly without looking at me. For wanting to do that way too much. And honestly, that might have been the exact moment I started falling for him too. After that, neither of us trusted ourselves enough to stay in the car much longer. Which honestly felt ridiculous considering nothing had technically happened. No kiss. No touching. Just Colton looking at me like I was something he'd wanted for months. And me realizing I wanted him too. The drive back to campus was quieter now, but not uncomfortable. If anything, the silence felt heavier. Aware. Every accidental brush of his hand against the gear shift made my brain short-circuit. At one red light, he glanced over and caught me already looking at him. Neither of us looked away immediately. That tiny moment somehow felt more intimate than anything else tonight. You're doing it again, he murmured. What? Thinking. I smiled nervously. Can you blame me? Not really. The light turned green, but something in his expression stayed soft afterward. Like he was trying very hard not to scare me off. When we got back near campus, he parked outside my apartment building instead of the party. So, I said quietly, you officially abandoned Noah's party for me. Best decision I made all week. I laughed under my breath. Then the silence returned again. Not awkward, just dangerous. Because now we were sitting alone in the dark outside my building with too many unfinished thoughts between us. You know what's weird? I admitted finally. What? I'm usually really good at reading people. Colton leaned slightly against the driver's door. And I cannot figure you out at all. That made him smile faintly. Good. How is that good? Because everyone else thinks they know me after 30 seconds. His eyes met mine. You actually try. That hit somewhere deep in my chest again. I hated how easily he could do that. One honest sentence, and suddenly I felt emotionally compromised. You make this very difficult, I muttered. You have no idea. The way he said it made heat crawl up my neck immediately. Then, before I could recover, he asked quietly, can I be honest about something else? Apparently stopping you isn't possible, so sure. He laughed softly, then grew serious again almost instantly. When you walked into that party tonight, he paused briefly. I forgot how to act. My heart stumbled. What? I had this whole plan to be normal around you. He shook his head slightly. Then you showed up, and I couldn't think straight for like 10 minutes. That was absurd. Actually absurd. You're Colton Hayes, I said. You literally flirt with people accidentally. No, his eyes stayed locked on mine. Not like this. The sincerity in his voice completely unraveled me. Because for the first time all night, I realized something terrifying. He was nervous too. Not socially. Not generally. Just with me. And somehow that made everything feel real in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. You seriously like me? I said softly, mostly to myself. His expression shifted immediately. Yeah, he answered just as softly. I seriously do. The honesty of it sat between us in complete silence. No games. No teasing. Just truth. And suddenly I understood why this felt so overwhelming. Because my entire life, attraction had always felt uncertain. Careful. Hidden. But Colton looked at me like liking me was the easiest thing in the world. That kind of certainty was almost impossible to process. I realized too late that I'd gone quiet for too long. You okay? He asked immediately. Yeah. I exhaled slowly, just trying not to freak out. That made him smile again, softer now. You want to know a secret? Sure. I was terrified you'd say no tonight. I stared at him. You? I laughed incredulously. Gavin, I asked you out like 6 times in my head before I actually did it. That is deeply upsetting information. It gets worse. He grinned slightly. Noah threatened to do it for me because I was taking too long. I laughed so hard I had to look away. And the second I did, Colton went quiet. When I looked back, he was staring at me again. That same intense expression from earlier. Like he couldn't help it. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Slower this time. Warmer. His voice dropped lower when he spoke again. You're really beautiful when you laugh. Everything inside me stopped functioning. Nobody had ever called me beautiful before. Not like that. Not carefully. The silence afterward felt enormous. I could hear my own heartbeat now. Colton noticed too. I knew he did because his expression softened instantly, like he realized exactly what that sentence had done to me. Sorry, he murmured again. You apologize a lot for someone this confident. That's because I keep wanting to say worse things. I actually lost the ability to breathe correctly for a second. He laughed softly at my reaction, then leaned his head back against the seat like he was trying to regain self-control again. This is torture, he muttered mostly to himself. What is? Trying not to overwhelm you. The scary part? I didn't want him to stop. That realization hit me all at once. Hard. Because somewhere between the party and this car ride, I'd stopped wondering whether Colton liked me, and started wondering what it would feel like if he kissed me. I barely slept that night. Not because anything dramatic happened. Actually, that was the problem. Colton had dropped me off, looked at me for one long second like he was debating something dangerous, then simply said, "Text me when you get upstairs." That was it. No kiss. No move. No pressure. Just concern, which somehow affected me more than if he'd actually kissed me goodnight. I texted him the second I got inside. Gavin. Alive. His reply came instantly. Colton. Good. Was starting to worry. I stared at that message way too long. Then another appeared. Colton. Also, I still want to kiss you. Just so we're clear. I physically dropped my phone onto my bed. Mason looked up from across the room immediately. Why do you look like you've seen God? I covered my face with both hands. I think Colton Hayes is trying to kill me psychologically. Mason sat upright instantly. What happened? Unfortunately for me, he got the entire story, including the drive, including the beautiful comment, including the fact that apparently Colton had been secretly obsessed with me since October, like some emotionally intelligent stalker. By the end, Mason looked deeply unwell. That man is down catastrophic, he announced. I hate you. No, seriously, Gavin. He pointed dramatically. Popular guys do not attend student film showcases voluntarily. Please stop reminding me. He wants you so bad it's embarrassing. The worst part? Mason was probably right. And somehow that made me even more nervous. Because I didn't know how to trust something this good. The next morning, I woke up to another text. Colton. Coffee. Just one word. But my entire chest tightened anyway. Gavin. You realize normal people wait at least a day before acting obsessed. 3 dots appeared immediately. Colton. I waited 4 months actually. I laughed out loud before I could stop myself. Mason groaned from his bed. Oh my God, you're smiling at your phone already. We've lost him. An hour later, I found Colton outside the same campus cafe where this whole disaster had started. The second he spotted me, his expression softened in that now familiar way that made my heart beat weird. It was subtle, quick, but unmistakably real. And suddenly I understood why people liked him so much. Because when Colton focused on you, it felt like sunlight. Hey, he said quietly as I approached. Hey. For half a second, neither of us moved. Then he handed me a coffee exactly how I ordered it. I blinked. How do you know my order? His mouth twitched slightly. You always get the same thing during editing nights. You are terrifying. You still came. Fair point. We sat near the window while students rushed past outside in the cold morning air. This version of him felt different again. Calmer. Softer. Like last night had changed something between us. At one point, I caught 2 girls staring openly from another table. One leaned toward the other and whispered something while looking between me and Colton. I immediately looked down at my drink. Colton noticed. You okay? People are looking. So this is weird. What is? I gestured vaguely between us. His expression turned thoughtful for a second, then unexpectedly gentle. Gavin, he said quietly. Are you embarrassed to be seen with me? My head snapped up instantly. What? No. Then what's wrong? I opened my mouth, closed it again, because the truth sounded pathetic out loud. I rubbed the back of my neck nervously. I'm waiting for this to stop feeling temporary. Something changed in his face immediately. All the teasing disappeared. Temporary? he repeated softly. I stared down at my coffee. Guys like you usually don't pick guys like me seriously. Silence. Then Colton said very carefully, can I tell you what's been driving me insane since October? I looked up slowly. You genuinely have no idea how attractive you are. The sincerity in his voice hit so hard it almost hurt. I'm serious, he continued. You walk around acting invisible while every person in every room notices you. That's definitely not true. It was true for me the first day I saw you. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too warm. You keep talking about me like I laughed nervously. I don't know. Like what? Special. His expression softened instantly. You are. No hesitation. No embarrassment. Just certainty again. And I realized something terrifying in that moment. Colton wasn't flirting casually anymore. He was trying to convince me to believe him. That realization settled heavily into my chest. Because nobody had ever looked at me like I was worth pursuing before. But Colton? Colton looked at me like he'd already made up his mind months ago. Everything changed after that conversation. Not dramatically, not all at once. But suddenly Colton stopped acting like someone hoping I might eventually like him back, and started acting like someone who already knew, which was somehow even more dangerous. Over the next 2 weeks, he became impossible to avoid on campus. Not in an overwhelming way, just consistent. Coffee between classes, walking me home after late editing nights, showing up at film department screenings like he belonged there now. The first time that happened after our party night, the entire room noticed immediately. I was setting up equipment before a student showcase when Mason suddenly grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. Don't look now, he whispered dramatically. But Captain America just walked into the building. Too late. I'd already seen him. Colton stood near the back entrance in a dark hoodie with his hands in his pockets, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. And then he smiled. Not the social smile everyone else got. This one was softer. Private. Mine. A few nearby film students immediately turned to stare at me. Oh my God, one girl whispered. He came for you. Heat flooded my face instantly. Colton walked over casually like none of this was insane. You nervous? He asked quietly. Extremely. You'll be great. Then, before my brain could process what was happening, he reached up and fixed the collar of my jacket gently. The entire room collectively stopped breathing, including me, because it was such a small gesture, but somehow incredibly intimate. Colton noticed my expression immediately. Too much, he asked softly. I shook my head before thinking better of it. His eyes lingered on mine 1 second too long, and suddenly I understood something terrifying. He was holding back constantly. Not because he wasn't sure what he wanted, but because he was trying not to scare me. That realization stayed with me the entire screening. Afterward, people kept approaching me with increasingly suspicious smiles. Mason looked especially unbearable. So, he said later while we packed equipment away, when exactly were you planning to mention that the hottest guy on campus is fully in love with you? He is not. Mason stared at me, then pointed across the room where Colton was currently waiting by the door watching me like I personally hung the moon. Gavin. Okay. Fair. Outside, cold air hit us immediately. You hungry? Colton asked. Always. Good. We ended up walking downtown to a tiny diner near campus that stayed open late for students. The place was mostly empty except for exhausted college kids and one tired waitress refilling coffee silently. And somehow, sitting across from him in a booth at 1 in the morning felt more intimate than the party ever had. No audience. No noise. Just us. At one point, Colton caught me staring. What? I looked down immediately. Nothing. He smiled knowingly. You've stopped looking away as fast. That sounds fake. Nope. He leaned slightly closer across the table. You're getting more comfortable with me. The scary part? He was right again. Somewhere along the way, being around him had stopped feeling impossible. Now it just felt good, which honestly might have been worse. You know what I realized today? He asked quietly. What? You trust me now. The honesty of that observation caught me off guard. Because I did, without even noticing when it happened. I studied him across the booth for a second before asking carefully. What happens if I do? His expression changed immediately. Softer. More serious. Then I keep trying to deserve it. That sentence hit somewhere deep inside me. Nobody had ever spoken to me with this kind of care before. Like my feelings were something valuable to protect. The waitress dropped off our food a minute later, interrupting whatever emotional crisis was happening in my chest. But even afterward, the atmosphere stayed different. Warmer. At some point, Colton smiled suddenly like he'd remembered something. What? You know what Noah said to me after the party? I'm scared already. He told me if I messed this up, he was switching sides in the breakup. I laughed so hard people turned to look at us. And once again, Colton got that expression every time I laughed. That impossibly soft look like he couldn't believe he caused it. The realization hit me suddenly and all at once. Oh my God, I muttered. What? You really fell first. His grin appeared instantly. Hard. And you're not even embarrassed about it. Should I be? Honestly, the answer should have been yes. A guy like Colton Hayes openly liking me this much still felt unreal. But sitting there across from him, watching the way he looked at me like I was something precious, I realized something important. Maybe the reason this scared me so much wasn't because I thought he'd hurt me. Maybe it was because for the first time in my life, someone saw me completely and chose me anyway. We walked back toward campus around 2 in the morning. The streets were mostly empty now, cold air turning our breaths visible under streetlights. At some point, our shoulders brushed accidentally. Neither of us moved away. Then his hand touched mine briefly. Tentative. Like he was asking a question without words. I looked over at him. Colton's expression stayed calm, but I could see tension underneath it now. Nervousness. Waiting. And suddenly I understood something that completely melted my heart. For all his confidence, he still cared what my answer would be. Even now. Slowly, carefully, I shook my fingers with his. The second I did, Colton stopped walking. I looked up immediately. He was staring at our hands like the contact meant more than he knew how to explain. Then he looked at me, and I swear nobody had ever looked happier in their entire life. Okay, he said quietly, almost laughing to himself. Wow. I smiled nervously. You good? No, he squeezed my hand gently. I think you just killed me actually. I laughed again, softer this time. And standing there in the middle of an empty street near campus, with Colton Hayes looking at me like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I finally stopped waiting for it to disappear. Because this wasn't temporary. It wasn't a joke, or a dare, or some passing interest from the most popular guy in college. It was real. And somehow, he had chosen me.